And we're back with the Screen Team. We've got Kadem, we got Jake. We're doing rock documentaries. We just finished watching the incredibly artistic, awesome Pearl Jam 20 documentary that these guys just loved. And we're getting ready to watch one of Jake's all-time favorite documentaries, It Might Get Loud. And this has your all-time favorite guitar player on there, Jack White, right?
Sure does. And I think that's what drew me to the movie. And really, I think that what probably drew a lot of guys or guitar players or musicians from my generation to the movie. And of course there's Jimmy Page too. You can't say no. Jimmy Page probably one of the greatest guitarists of all time, at least as far as being influential as rock and roll guitarist. And the Edge is in there. I'm not the hugest U2 fan, but I am a fan. I am a fan of the Edge's approach to guitar. Now, you ask Candy, she loves watching this documentary with me too, and she's like, "This movie would be even better if they just cut all the Edge's parts out."
That hurts my soul.
I don't agree with her. I like the Edge's parts, but it does seem to be Edge heavy at times.
Yeah, it's interesting because not only do we get some of the backstories with all three of these musicians, we also kind of understand their style of playing. When I watch this film, it almost seems like guitar porn to me. Like, if you are a guitarist, you are going to love this film. And Kadem, you love this film, don't you?
100%. It was probably one of the best movies, documentaries, whatever, just one of my favorite things ever. Just emotional roller coaster, between Jake can agree, between being a guitar player and just seeing what they do and how they do it. Just like I said, emotional roller coaster.
It's amazing to see that you don't have to play the guitar one way, not just to be successful, but just to play. I mean, you mentioned the Edge, and when you see the Edge's equipment, it's like something out of NASA. Yeah. It's just, something that's like a rocket scientist made. He's got all these different buttons and effects and sounds, and then you see Jack White and his music. He tries to get to the most simplistic form that there is, and both sides are okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the documentary says you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way. There's many different roads you can take to play music and play guitar.
Yes, and one of the things that really proves that, there's several scenes in this movie to where it kind of just, the dialogue backs off, and it's just showing, it's interlacing like a few lines of dialogue with just one of the guitar players playing a riff. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is with Jimmy Page. He's in like the warehouse room. He's got a huge high watt amp set up, and it's just him and a Les Paul plugged straight into the amp, and just by manipulating a switch on the guitar, he's going from a quiet sound. He's doing now I can't remember the name of the song.
I don't even remember.
You don't even remember? I had it right in my head. I'll come back to it at a point, but he's going through the quiet portion of the song, real subtle. You can barely tell it's an electric guitar, and then he hits like the chorus, "Ramble On." That's what it is. It's just Jimmy and his guitar doing "Ramble On," and just his guitar straight into an amp, and that's all he needed to make so much expression. He could make so many different sounds just with his fingers and his guitar. And that's my favorite scene of this movie is just Jimmy Page playing "Ramble On," and then seeing Jack White in the Edge's face when he starts playing "Whole Lotta Love" riff in front of them, and they're just staring at. Everybody puts down the guitars and they're just looking at Jimmy Page.
What I thought was cool is you see Jimmy Page and you're like, Led Zeppelin, and you find out in like the middle of the documentary that Jimmy Page, before he was in Led Zeppelin, before he was in the Yardbirds, he was a session guitarist, which means he was on jingles, he was on soundtracks, he was on, he doesn't even know all the stuff he was on, and you see the Edge, he's like, you were on Goldfinger, the James Bond film? Like he was more excited about that than, him being in the same room as the, lead guitarist of Led Zeppelin. But, you kind of see, you understand a little bit of why Jimmy Page is, because he was in those session rooms and, it did what it had to do, but it also bored him to where when he moved on from that he wanted to express himself in more ways than just being a session guitarist. And you can hear that in the Led Zeppelin music. Definitely.
And his guitar playing always just explodes. And I feel the same way with Jack White. He's very expressive. He uses at this era, now I don't know what kind of equipment he's using so much, but he explains in the film where he uses like an old fiberglass body guitar that you would have got from the Sears catalog in the 1960s. Very cheaply made, very for the starting guitarist, and an old Sears amplifier, which I bought one because of him from the 60s, an old Sears tube amplifier. And, what he does with this old equipment and brings this new life to it, and it has such a crazy organic sound to it that you wouldn't believe, like when you listen to a White Stripes record, you wouldn't believe that he's doing this on instruments that he probably paid like $50 and $60 a piece for. Yeah. Now, because everybody knows that's what Jack White uses, everybody's looking for them, and they've gone upwards in value quite a bit. But it's amazing what he does with so little, especially with the White Stripes.
And you mentioned that. Do you remember the first scene in the movie where you see Jack White? He's making his own homemade guitar out of a Coke bottle and a piece of wood, and
you don't need money to buy a guitar or something like that. And I was like, yes, this is great.
Yeah, he said, "Who needs to buy a guitar?" That's called a diddly bow. I've made one before just because of the movie, but
yeah, did it turn out well?
Yeah, it's a 2x4, a guitar pickup, a Coke bottle, a nail, and a guitar string. A couple nails and a guitar string, and you could just use a bottleneck or something as a slide to slide up and down. And that's cool. That's what a lot of black musicians. I have to say black. I hate to say it that way, but that's down in the Mississippi Delta area. That's where the blues came from. Is these guys making these homemade instruments? Diddly bow. They'd make them out of broomsticks, or they'd usually use a glass bottle, and that's how they'd get the resonant sound if they couldn't afford to buy a guitar.
Kate and I have a question. What's Jack White's deal? It's because why don't you ask?
He just got that look of, I'm a little bit better than you. I just get that kind of feel when he's playing in front of Jimmy Page and The Edge. He plays and he sings, and then he just looks at him dead silent face, just like, you like that? You want a little bit more? Here you go. That's what's going on.
He is a strange guy, for sure. I've looked the guy dead in the eye and shook his hand after a show at the pageant in 2008 when he was with his side band, the Raconteurs. Mm-hmm. This was, I guess, It Might Get Loud, I think, was probably filmed in 2007, so it was right after he'd filmed this movie. Mm-hmm. And, he's got a crazy stare. Even if, he's not even really looking at you, he's looking through you.
So who's going to like this documentary? Just guitar players, just musicians, or can the average person dig this film, you think?
Personally, probably musicians, of course, guitar players. Mm-hmm. But if anybody's got an interest in rock and roll, period, or any kind of music genre, sure, why not? Go ahead. And, I'm one of the people where I think everybody in the whole world likes some type of music. Mm-hmm. There's not one person out there that can say, I don't like music. I mean, that's just something that I can't comprehend. But anybody could watch it, and just sit back and enjoy it. If you just appreciate music in general, go ahead.
You agree?
I agree with Kadam. This is a great put together, a very well put together film, very high production value, and it tells a great story without getting too heady. So it's worth a watch if you want to just rent it. It's probably available on some streaming services. I think you can get it on Amazon Prime right now. So it's worth a watch. It's not a real long documentary either.
It's definitely a good watch, and it has Jack White in there, Jimmy Page, and The Edge all doing their guitar thing. It's called It Might Get Loud. Coming up after the break, Jake and I will review the Eagles documentary. It's coming your way next on KWOC.